Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making blueberry bread. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this, and it's really not a lot of ingredients, but I am using some real butter in this and some fresh blueberries. So that kind of makes the difference in what you're making. If some people make this, they use oil to cook the bread. I don't do oil in it. I use butter because you're still getting a fat and oil and everything from the butter. It just works really well, but it gives it such a better taste. And I prefer to use the fresh blueberries, which right now they're in stores. They're very cheap. That really doesn't cost you that much. I paid $1 and something for this container that I have, and there's more than enough to make this bread. And besides that, all you see are the ingredients that are here. There really aren't that many to make this, but it comes out with such a great taste. And this is something that's really a good thing to have around to eat. As long as you fix this, you refrigerate it, you can eat on this for a couple of days. It's really wonderful. So we're going to start off with our blueberries. You need 1.5 cups of these. What you need to do though is go through your container and pick through them and pick out good ones, and make sure you don't grab anything with a stem on it or these little teeny tiny ones that look like they're kind of like odd colored, because they're not really developed, they're not really grown, they're not very big. And if you keep putting those in, they're going to taste it because they don't really have a lot of flavor. They're really hard and small. They're not really worth the effort. So go ahead and pick these out until you have about 1.5 cups. It doesn't have to be exact. We're just going to guesstimate the 1.5 cups when we put them into the bowl. And then once they're into the bowl and we have as many as we think we need, you take these and wash them, because you don't want to use them straight out of the container, because you never know what's been in that container or how clean these have been from the beginning. So you really want to wash them, make sure that they're taken care of in that department before you go ahead and use it. And I want you to see all these ones I'm picking out that are no good here, because they do put them in. So after they're washed, these are mine coming back from the sink, I am putting them into another bowl with a paper towel just to soak up some of the water. We're not trying to get it all off of there. We just want to get off a lot of it, so that way they're not soaking wet when we go to use them later. But they'll still be a little moist, because that's fine. We just want to get off a little bit of the water and go from there. So as you can see, we have them there, and we're going to move on to a large bowl where we have 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And then to this, we're adding 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now once we get this in, we're going to whisk this up to where we make sure that all of these ingredients mix together, because we want to get the sugar all through the flour. We also make sure that the baking powder and the salt mixes through really well, because we don't want salt and baking powder staying in one place and not mixing through the whole thing, because you will taste that if it's not mixed up really well. Because even though you're going to mix this with wet ingredients, it doesn't always mix completely through, and you really don't want to taste salt when you're trying to eat something that you think should be sweet. So go ahead and mix this up with a whisk till it's completely mixed through. And once we're done with this, we're going to move on to our wet ingredients, and this is where the stick of butter comes in. Now mind you, if you were doing this normally, you'd used 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I'm not doing that. I'm just basically using a stick of butter, and I'm going to cut this into slices, and then I'm going to pop it in the microwave to actually soften it up and, kind of get it a little on the liquidy side. It's not going to break down completely if you stick it in the microwave for just a little bit, but it'll get to a point where it's warm enough to where it'll continue to break down as you mix, because we don't want to actually cook the butter. We just want to melt it down a little bit. And as you can see, mine still has a little bit of solid in it, but as I stir it, it's going to break down and go away. And that's exactly what we want it to do. So go ahead and mix that up and get it going. Now somewhere along this time right now, you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, because when this goes into the oven, it's going to cook for 1 hour to 1 hour and 10 minutes until it's done. Mine took 1 hour and 10 minutes, but sometimes ovens cook hotter than others. So it's one of those things you kind of need to just, pay attention to it when it gets toward the end at the hour marker, just to make sure. And you can always do that test of sticking a toothpick in it or whatever to see if it comes out clean, just to see if you have a lot of wetness in the middle of it. So once I get my butter completely broken up here and go through this, I'm just going to add in the rest of my wet ingredients, and we're going to mix this up and add it to the dry, and that's going to be what we're going to do to mix up the actual body of this bread. So we're going to use 1 large egg, and then we're going to put this in and make sure we break open that yolk before we add anything else to this, because if you don't, sometimes they don't break up really well when you're mixing this by hand. I like mixing my stuff by hand sometimes, and this is one of the things I do, especially when I'm making something like a small little bread like this. Really, I don't need the mixer. I can do this between using a spatula and a whisk. It's just easy enough to do. I just like making sure everything is mixed really well through. So to this, we are adding in some vanilla extract, which we have a half a teaspoon, which you can actually add more. Now, mind you, I added about a teaspoon and a half to mine just because I like the taste of it, but it only calls for, you know, about 1 teaspoon. And then we're going to add to this 3/4 of a cup of milk. And then we're going to mix that up as well. Now, I'm going to start mixing this with the spatula, and then I'm going to move over to the whisk so that way I can really whip this up and get it mixed through. So, like I said, here comes the whisk. With a whisk, you can actually whip this to a point where you really can get it kind of frothy and all mixed together, and that's really what's a good thing about using this. You can use a mixer with this, and that's really great, but there's really no need to drag it out and use it for just a little bit of part of what we're going to do right here. There's really just not that much to it. So just go ahead and mix it up, make sure it's all mixed through, and then we are going to actually pour a little bit of the flour into the blueberries. I mean, just grab a handful of it, do it, just go over top of them. They're still a little moist. The flour is going to stick to them, and this will kind of stop them from all sinking to the bottom. I mean, some of them are going to do it. It's just what it is. But this will kind of help them have a little resistance when they go into the mix to go into our baking dish. So once we get that done, we're going to actually take our wet ingredients, add it to the dry, and then we're going to mix this up. Again, whisk it. It really isn't that hard to do that part. And we're just going to mix this up until everything is all through there. We don't want any dry parts. Make sure you scrape the sides and the bottom. And along the way here, you are going to need a loaf pan to put this in. Now, mind you, I'm using a Pyrex one when I go to do mine, but you could use metal if you want to. Basically, this is just 8.5 by 4.5 size pan. It's not really anything spectacular or big. And then once we get this stuff mixed up here, we're going to add in our blueberries. And once they go into this, we're just going to put like half of them in, fold them a little bit, and then bring the rest in. So that way they get a good coating on the outside of them. But we're not knocking them around all that much. We don't want to break them up or hurt them in the process because we want them whole. And then once they're all in there, the next step is just get this completely folded and get ready to put this into our baking pan. Now, you're going to need some nonstick cooking spray for this. Just spray it all around the sides and the bottom just to make sure that you don't have anything sticking, because we don't want the whole loaf to stick to the bottom of it. Good thing about using the Pyrex thing, I've never had it stick before, so that's a really good thing. So go ahead and scrape all of your ingredients into your baking dish. And if you haven't done it already, that oven needs to be at 350 degrees. Like I said, about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes is what you're going to need for this. And just make sure you get everything out of your bowl into this, because we don't want to waste any of this, definitely. Because this is going to be so amazing when you go to eat it. It has such a great taste. So keep going with it till you get it all out of there. And once we get this all into our baking dish, the only thing that is left to do is, once we like smooth the top of this, we're going to actually put some sugar over the top, and you're going to use about like a tablespoon of sugar. And what this is going to do to it is, when it bakes, it's going to kind of like a crunchy outer edge and a little sweetness on top, and it sets off everything in the bread, which is wonderful. So just sprinkle it around the top as you go back and forth, and just go from side to side, back and front, and just make sure it's completely coated. Because once it is, then we're ready to put this in the oven, and it comes back looking something like this, and this is an amazing thing to eat, and it's so wonderful. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.